Good evening and welcome. Tonight, we venture into the frozen halls of another ancient world, where gods walk among ash and ice, where fate is woven by hands that cannot be stayed, and where even immortals know they are not eternal. Get cozy, settle in, and let's begin. In the beginning, there was no earth, no heaven, no grass below, nor sky above. There was only Ginnungagap, the yawning void, a great emptiness stretching between two realms. To the north lay Niflheim, a world of ice and mist, where 11 rivers called the Elivagar flowed from the spring Vergelmir, freezing as they moved farther from their source. To the south burned Muspelheim, a realm of fire and flame, guarded by Surtur, a giant with a flaming sword who would one day set the world ablaze. Between these extremes, in the void itself, ice and fire met. The heat from Muspelheim melted the ice of Niflheim, and from the dripping rime came the first being, Ymir, the primordial giant, ancient and alone. He was not good nor evil, simply the first. As he slept, he sweated, and from his sweat came more giants, male and female, born from his armpits and the meeting of his legs. Thus began the race of frost giants, the Jötnar, beings of chaos and primal force. From the melting ice came another creature, Audumla, the primeval cow, whose milk fed Ymir. She licked the salty ice blocks for sustenance, and as she licked, a form began to emerge. First came hair, then a head, then a full body. This was Buri, the first of the gods, beautiful and strong. Buri had a son named Bor, and Bor took as his wife Besla, a giantess, daughter of one of Ymir's descendants. From their union came 3 sons who would reshape the cosmos: Odin, Vili, and Ve. The sons of Bor looked upon Ymir and the chaos of the giants and saw that the world had no order, no meaning, no shape. So they rose against the primordial giant and slew him. When Ymir fell, so much blood poured from his wounds that it drowned nearly all the frost giants. Only Bergelmir and his wife escaped in a boat made from a hollowed tree trunk, and from them the race of giants would continue, forever remembering the slaughter, forever hostile to the gods who had spilled their ancestors' blood. From Ymir's body, the 3 brothers crafted the world. His flesh became the earth, his blood the seas and lakes, his bones the mountains, his teeth the rocks and pebbles. His hair became the trees and vegetation. His skull they lifted high and made the dome of heaven, placing it upon 4 dwarves, Nordri, Sudri, Ostri, and Vestri, who stood at the 4 corners, north, south, east, and west. From Ymir's brains, they created the clouds, which drifted across the new sky. And from the sparks of Muspelheim, they made the stars, the sun, and the moon, setting them on paths across the heavens. This was Midgard, the middle realm, encircled by a great ocean in which dwelt Jörmungandr, the world's serpent, so vast it wrapped around the earth and bit its own tail. The gods built for themselves Asgard, a shining realm connected to Midgard by Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, a pathway of shifting light that trembled beneath the hooves of horses but never broke. At least, not yet. The world was made, but it was empty of human voices. One day, as Odin, Vili, and Ve walked along a beach, they found 2 trees washed ashore, an ash and an elm. The brothers saw potential in the wood. Odin gave them breath and life. Vili gave them consciousness and movement. Ve gave them faces, speech, hearing, and sight. The ash became Ask, the first man. The elm became Embla, the first woman. From them descended all of humanity, dwelling in Midgard beneath the watchful eyes of gods and giants. But the gods were not finished creating. From the maggots that had fed on Ymir's corpse came the dwarves, crafted by the gods into beings of intelligence and skill. They were given consciousness and form, and they dwelt beneath the mountains in vast halls of stone, where they became the greatest smiths in all the realms, forging wonders that even the gods coveted. And from the sparks and roots and sacred places came other beings, light elves and dark elves, spirits of forest and stream, creatures that would walk the edges of the world long after the gods had fallen. At the center of all creation stood Yggdrasil, the world tree, an ash of impossible size whose branches stretched across all 9 realms and whose roots delved deep into the wells of fate. It was more than a tree. It was the axis upon which existence turned. 3 great roots supported it. One reached into Asgard, where the gods held council beside the well of Urd. Another stretched to Jotunheim, land of the giants, where it drank from the spring of Mimir, whose waters held all wisdom. The third descended into Niflheim, into the realm of ice and the dead, where the serpent Nidhogg gnawed constantly at the root, seeking to bring the tree down. Upon Yggdrasil's branches perched an eagle, wise and watchful, and between its eyes sat a hawk named Vedafölnir. A squirrel named Ratatosk ran up and down the trunk, carrying insults between the eagle above and the serpent below, ensuring that their ancient enmity never cooled. 4 stags wandered among the branches, eating the young shoots, and from the tree's limbs dripped dew that became the rivers of the world. Beneath the tree, at the well of Urd, sat the Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, past, present, and future. They were not gods, but something older, something even the gods could not command. Every day they drew water from the well and poured it over Yggdrasil's roots to keep the tree alive. And every day they wove the fates of gods and men alike, spinning threads that could not be cut by any hand but their own. Even Odin, the All-Father, could not sway them. He might glimpse the future, might rage against what he saw, but the Norns' weaving continued, patient and inexorable. First among the gods was Odin, called the All-Father, the Wanderer, the One-Eyed. He was not a god of simple thunder or straightforward strength, but of wisdom, war, poetry, and death. He sat upon his throne, Hlidskjalf, from which he could see into all the worlds, and upon his shoulders perched 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, Thought and Memory, who flew across the realms each day and returned at dusk to whisper into his ears all they had seen. But Odin's wisdom had been hard-won, purchased with sacrifice. Long ago, he had traveled to the well of Mimir, which lay beneath Yggdrasil's root in Jotunheim. The well's water granted knowledge beyond measure, but Mimir, its guardian, demanded payment. Odin plucked out his own eye and cast it into the well, trading sight for insight, surface vision for the ability to see deeper truths. From that day forward, he wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low to shadow his missing eye. And he wandered the worlds not as a king in splendor, but as a hooded stranger seeking ever more knowledge. His thirst for wisdom led him to even greater torment. He learned of the runes, symbols of power that could shape reality itself, but they were hidden, locked away in a mystery that demanded suffering to unlock. So Odin took his spear, Gungnir, and pierced himself through the side. He hanged himself from Yggdrasil's branches for 9 days and 9 nights, wounded and starving, no food, no water, swaying in the wind above the void. He sacrificed himself to himself, the ultimate offering. On the 9th night, as his vision blurred and death drew near, the runes revealed themselves, burning into his consciousness. He fell from the tree, gasping, transformed. He had died and returned, and now He possessed knowledge that no other god commanded. Odin was not a gentle god. He was the lord of the slain, and half of all warriors who died in battle were claimed by his Valkyries, warrior maidens who rode across battlefields, choosing the bravest of the dead. These fallen heroes were brought to Valhalla, Odin's great hall in Asgard, where they feasted and fought each day, preparing for the final battle that Odin knew was coming. For the All-Father carried a terrible burden. He knew the future. He had glimpsed Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods, the day when the world would burn, and even he would fall. And so everything he did, every alliance, every sacrifice, every gathering of warriors, was preparation for a war he knew he could not win. Where Odin was cunning and dark, his son Thor was straightforward and bright. Thor was the god of thunder, protector of Asgard and Midgard, beloved by common folk who called upon his name when storms rolled across the fields. He was not subtle. He did not scheme or sacrifice. He simply was strong, brave, quick to anger, quick to laugh. Thor's greatest treasure was his hammer, Mjolnir, forged by the dwarven brothers Sindri and Brokkr. The hammer was so powerful it could level mountains, yet it always returned to Thor's hand when thrown. It was the weapon that kept the giants at bay, the tool with which he defended both gods and men from the chaos that forever pressed against the borders of the ordered world. He wore iron gloves to wield it, and a belt that doubled his already immense strength. Thor traveled often to Jotunheim to battle giants, accompanied by his companion Loki, the trickster god whose relationship with Thor was equal parts friendship and frustration. The tales of their journeys were many. The time Thor fished for Jörmungandr and nearly hauled the world serpent from the depths. The time he was tricked by the giant king Utgard Loki and unknowingly wrestled with old age itself. The time he retrieved his hammer from the giant Thrym, who had stolen it and demanded the goddess Freya as ransom. That last tale ended with Thor disguised as a bride, wearing a wedding dress and veil, his beard stuffed beneath silk, sitting furious and glowering at the wedding feast. When Mjolnir was brought forth to consecrate the union, Thor threw off his disguise, seized the hammer, and slaughtered every giant in the hall. It was not a tale of cleverness, but of Thor's willingness to endure any humiliation to protect what mattered. And then there was Loki. He was counted among the Aesir, the gods of Asgard, yet he was not one of them by birth. He was a giant, son of Farbauti and Laufey, brought into Asgard by Odin, with whom he had sworn blood brotherhood. Loki was clever, charming, and dangerous. He was the spark of chaos in an ordered world, the voice that questioned, the hand that disrupted. Sometimes his tricks were harmless or even helpful. He once wagered his head with dwarves and lost, only to argue that while they could take his head, he had not bet his neck, and so they could not cut it off. He had Sif's golden hair sheared while she slept, then ventured to the dwarves to have new hair forged from real gold, more beautiful than before. In the process, he acquired many treasures for the gods: Odin's spear Gungnir, Freya's ship Skidbladnir, and the boar Gullinbursti. But Loki's tricks grew darker. He was jealous of Baldr, the shining god, beloved by all. Baldr had begun to dream of his own death, and his mother Frigg traveled through all the realms, extracting oaths from every creature, every plant, every stone, that none would harm her son. She overlooked only the mistletoe, thinking it too young and weak to matter. Loki discovered this. He fashioned a dart from mistletoe and gave it to Baldr's blind brother Hörder, guiding his hand. The dart flew, pierced Baldr's heart, and the brightest of the gods fell dead. The gods were shattered. They sent Hermoda to the underworld to plead for Baldr's return. Hel, the goddess of the dead, agreed to release him on one condition: that everything in the world, living and dead, must weep for Baldr. And they did. Every stone, every tree, every creature wept, except one. A giantess named Thok, hidden in a cave, refused to shed a tear. Thok was Loki in disguise. Because of his spite, Baldr remained in the land of the dead, and the gods' doom drew one step closer. The gods could forgive much, but not this. They hunted Loki down. He fled and hid, transforming into a salmon in a remote river. But the gods cast a net and caught him. They dragged him to a cave, where they bound him with the entrails of his own son, Nafi, whom they had slain before his eyes. Above him, they fastened a serpent, whose venom dripped onto his face. His faithful wife, Sigyn, sat beside him with a bowl, catching the poison. But when she turned to empty it, the venom fell upon him, and Loki writhed in agony, his convulsions shaking the earth in what men called earthquakes. There he would remain, bound and tormented, until the day of Ragnarök, when he would break free and lead the giants and the dead against the gods in the final battle. The Norns wove it. Odin saw it. The Skalds sang of it. Ragnarök was not a possibility, but a certainty. The end of the world, written into its very foundation. It would begin with signs, 3 winters with no summer between them. Fimbulvetur, the great winter. Brother would turn against brother, kin against kin. Morality would collapse, and the bonds that held society together would fray and snap. Then the wolves would come. Skjöld, who chased the sun, and Hati, who pursued the moon, would finally catch their prey and devour them. Darkness would swallow the world. The earth would tremble as Loki broke free of his bonds. The great wolf Fenrir, Loki's monstrous son, would shatter his chains. The serpent Jörmungandr would rise from the ocean, thrashing and flooding the land with waves. The dead would pour forth from Hel's realm aboard a ship made of the fingernails of corpses, captained by Loki himself. Heimdall, watchman of the gods, would blow the Gjallarhorn, calling the gods and the warriors of Valhalla to the final battle. They would ride out across Bifröd to meet their enemies on the plain of Vigrid. Odin would face Fenrir and be swallowed whole. Thor would kill Jörmungandr, but stagger back 9 paces and fall dead from its venom. Freyr would fight Surtur and fall. Heimdall and Loki would slay each other. The gods would die, one by one, and Surtur would raise his flaming sword and set the world ablaze. The earth would sink into the sea. The stars would vanish. All would end. But the Norns wove more than death. After the fire and the flood, the earth would rise again from the water, green and fertile. A new sun, daughter of the old, would ride across the sky. 2 humans, Lif and Lifthrasir, who had hidden themselves in the wood of Yggdrasil, would emerge to repopulate the world, and some gods would survive. Baldr would return from the dead, Herder beside him, reconciled at last. Thor's sons Modi and Magni would carry Mjolnir. Odin's sons Vidar and Vali would endure. A new age would begin, and the cycle would continue. The Norse gods were never all-powerful. They were mighty, yes, but they bled. They feared. They knew they would die. There was no promise of eternal heaven, no guarantee of victory. What mattered was how one faced the end. Courage, honor, loyalty. These were the virtues sung in the mead halls. To die bravely, to stand firm even when defeat was certain, to laugh in the face of fate. This was what it meant to be worthy. The myths of the North do not comfort us with eternal salvation. They tell us the world is harsh, that winter is long, that even gods grow old. But they also tell us that from every ending comes a new beginning, that even after Ragnarök, life returns. They teach us that wisdom is worth any price, that kinship and loyalty matter more than gold, and that the stories we leave behind are the only immortality we can truly claim. And now, the story ends. The fires of Muspelheim dim, the ice of Niflheim stills, but the myths remain, whispered in the wind, carved into ancient stones, carried forward in every tale of heroes who dared to defy their fate. Good night.